Oh, I'm excited to get into this one because I'm so curious what you guys are going to say.
Okay.
So here's the question. Am I the asshat for refusing to pay for my nephew's college education after setting clear conditions? We pull these directly from the Reddit feed, and it's from a 29-year-old's female's point of view. So she writes, I married into money a few years ago. My family isn't wealthy, but my husband's side is. My husband owns a rather successful business, and we're very comfortable with a very sizable bank account. My sister, who is 38, has a son, Jake, a senior in high school, who's been talking about going to college for a while, and he keeps saying that he wants to be a doctor. The issue is my sister can't afford to send him. She's a single mom, and I totally understand the financial struggles, probably physical too, that she's struggling. And facing. My sister's situation, and knowing this, I told her that I'd be willing to help Jake with his college expenses as long as he met a few conditions. I didn't want to just hand over the money without some responsibility attached. So I laid out 3 conditions for Jake to meet before I'd commit to paying. Number 1, he would need to work full-time, 20 hours a week. Number 2, he would need to complete 80 hours of community service every year. He could volunteer at the food pantry with me if he'd like. And number 3, he needed to maintain a grade average of 75 or higher, which I did Google just GPA-wise. Yeah. That's a 3.0, like a B.
That's a B.
It's a B.
Okay,
so she continues. I didn't think these were unreasonable, and I made sure to explain this to Jake, my sister, and even my husband. I wanted to set expectations so that everyone was clear about the deal. My husband automatically on board. We're child-free, so we don't have anyone else that we need to pay college for, and I was willing to help after my sister asked. However, as the application deadlines were approaching, it became clear that Jake isn't meeting these qualifications. His GPA is under the cutoff at 72. 75 was the cutoff. Said he's only working 10 hours a week, and he hasn't completed any community service at all. I tried to talk to him about it multiple times, and he keeps promising to do better, but he hasn't made any real change. So with the deadline looming, I told my sister that I won't be paying for his college education until he meets the conditions I set. She's furious with me and says I'm being too harsh and that I should just help him regardless of whether he meets the conditions. She feels like I'm abandoning him when he needs help the most, and she also accused me of holding a, quote, financial carrot over his head in a way that's manipulative. I understand her frustration, but I feel like I've been reasonable, and I don't want Jake to just coast through life without putting in any effort. He's old enough to understand responsibility, and these conditions seem fair to me. My husband agrees, but my sister-in-law says I'm a cold-hearted aunt, and the threat of student loan debt will make Jake's grades worse. I feel like I'm giving him a fair opportunity. My sister has been texting me every couple of hours trying to guilt me into paying. Am I the asshat for not being willing to pay? 651-641-1071. What say you guys?
Not the asshat. Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Absolutely not. It is completely within your rights as a human being, not a parent, you're an aunt, to say this money is actually conditional. And this is what it looks like. These are the conditions. She outlined them. It sounds like very, very explicitly. And he is not only not meeting them, he is spectacularly missing them. So no, not the asshat.
Yeah.
It's not like this was a secret. It's not like she's pulling some punch at the end of the road. She was upfront about this all the way through.
Yeah.
That's my feeling. Thank you for asking.
No, I'm glad you have strong feelings
Your
about
thoughts?
this. Yeah, well, my thought, okay. So you're right. She has set clear expectations. His GPA is really close. At 72 and 75 is the limit. But you're right, though. If you set it, now he's working 10 hours. He has done no community service. It sounds to me like the sister might be the biggest asshat.
Yeah.
Because you're kind of the middle person in knowing these are the limits. And to help him get there.
Right.
And especially if she's already volunteering, you could just volunteer with her. But then I'm also like, do you
But I feel like
just give, but yeah.
I feel like if he were missing in one area, she might be reasonable about like what's the plan.
It's
but
all three.
It's all three areas.
You're right.
It's, like I can see a case as a human being where you might have compassion around one thing, but if they agreed to those terms at the outset and none of them are being met, you also teach a kid of any age a lesson when you set those
parameters.
You set those parameters, and then you still reward them anyway. Like that's not the world, y'all.
No,
like that's not how the world works.
No, it's so true. Okay, so I'm gonna say not the asshat as well. Holly, what say you?
Not the asshat. I guess when you were reading this, Alexis, I was curious if these were the conditions, and it seems like that these are the conditions of this individual while they're in high school. When you were reading it, I was like, oh, these are the conditions while you're in college.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I see.
And so I'm like, oh, okay, those are interesting conditions for a high schooler. Are they doing extracurriculars? They do whatever. So that I was just like, I guess I'm not clear, but then ultimately became clear. I mean, it's not the asshat because you did lay it out.
Yeah.
It is a failure in all of the categories.
Yeah.
And it's, hey, if there's an improvement plan, let's work on the improvement plan. Because I understand where the aunt is coming from, who wants to give the money. It's not that they don't want to do it, but am I just going to be paying for college 10 years and you're never going to finish?
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to succeed and set you up for success. Just all these questions where like I'm just, a touch of ass.
A little bit of ass hattie.
Yeah.
Touch of ass.
Right. Well, and then you're like, well, then, okay, what do you give? If you're not going to do that, do you give them money as a graduation gift? But we're not there.
And that's the other thing is like I happen to be of the opinion that you are under no obligation as a human being in a family to finance somebody else's anything.
Yeah.
Just because that can get really tricky and really messy. And she was generous in like creating a plan to make it possible.
Yeah.
That I don't think it was and if it were impossible to meet those bars, then they should have talked about that on the front end, right? Like that is a conversation you have on the front end. Like I know if somebody said to me, your kid needs to complete 80 hours of anything, I'd be like, okay, well, we got to talk through that because we got to figure out where those 80 hours are.
Well, that's exactly where I was going. Yeah, Colleen, where it's like, okay, well, what are the conditions for that? That's a lot for a high schooler.
Yeah.
I don't know what their schedule is like. So yes, a touch of ass.
Or like how long they had to complete that. Or there's a lot of questions I still have.
Yeah.
But if she was clear about laying it out, and it actually sounds like, because it was sort of buried in there, that like she's open to a plan going forward, that she said basically like, and no plans to change it. Like I've said, if we can meet these things, then we can do it. So then I'm thinking like maybe he needs to take a gap year and finish the thing he started.
Oh.
Like maybe she'd be forgiving about the GPA because it's just short of that. But if he completes the other parts of it, maybe they're still, it doesn't sound like she's just shut it down completely. She's just said not at this deadline.
Right.
Like
yeah,
we're not meeting the bar.
Yes. Let's go to the lines.
Yeah.
Jen's on the line. Good morning, Jen. Thanks for calling. Is she the asshat?
She absolutely is not. And thank you guys. I have to call you guys when I hear these things because I get so emotional.
I'm glad you do.
She 100% is not. And here's another question for you. And hey, a B is a good grade, but do you know how hard it is to get into a good school?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't even know what schools, if you want to become a doctor, if that's even at a level to get into a good school.
Yeah.
Succeed at that.
Good point, Jen.
Listen, Jen, I was thinking that in the back of my mind as well. Like, those grades are not going to be pre-med grades. Like, they're just not, probably.
Yeah, so why throw that away? Why not let them grow up a little bit? Because yeah, that med school is not easy, and you have to be willing to do a lot.
Yeah.
And all your time to that. So what she asked of him, I feel, is really little.
Yeah.
His goal is to become a doctor. And yeah, I like a secondary plan.
Right. Yeah.
And for them to live in the reality of it. And then another question, and this is just separate, has he met with the school counselor to hear what the counselor tells him?
Right.
To get into a school that would lead him there? Because I believe a counselor would say more.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
Yes. Fantastic. Thank you for calling, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
All right. Let's head to Melanie. Melanie, thank you so much for calling. Is this Auntie the asshat?
No. Are you calling for Melanie?
Yes.
Or asking Melanie?
Yes, I am.
Hi, gals.
Hey, Melanie. Hey.
Hey, good morning, gals.
Good morning.
No, the auntie is not the asshat, and I wish I could be next to her and just give her a big hug and say, stay strong, woman, because she is on the right track trying to help her nephew. And personal story, my sister did this for her son and said, we're not paying for college, and we will if you this, and this.
Mhm.
And he missed a couple of those bars. And, you know, it was his bachelor's degree, so it wasn't life or death. But he missed a couple of those. And she's like, well, sorry, you're not getting reimbursed this term. So they did it term by term by term. You know, like,
Oh, that's good too. Yeah.
yeah,
So smart.
yeah. And so if he missed it that first term, no, we're not reimbursing you for that term. And then he'd get it the next term, and they'd plunk back the money in his account. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. I couldn't be that strong. I'm too much of a pushover.
Right. But it does teach them the lessons early.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
And
not
then,
the
as Colleen earlier you said, or something about they need to be held, the real world, they need to be held.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the you know, her sister was saying, you need to help him when he needs the help the most. Well, what he needs is to learn those lessons.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
How to help him the most.
Logical consequences are the best teacher.
Yes.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Melanie.
Thanks,
It's a
Melanie.
great way to end it. Claire, Faith, I'm so sorry we can't take your call. We're running out of time.